All right. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's been a very long time since I've recorded a YouTube video, probably since like 8 months or 10 months ago. And honestly, because 2020 has been a crazy ride for probably you, including myself. For myself, I've honestly moved out of the West Coast. I'm no longer in the Bay Area. Got a new job. My daughter was born. I sold all my belongings in California and I bought a house completely empty, never seeing it. Crazy. And I just moved to the East Coast. There's just been so much going on in my life that it's hard to come up with content, to be honest with you. Like sometimes I just want to build and it's difficult. So now I'm going to try a new mindset of just creating content based on things that I'm learning on the daily basis without having to really focus on perfecting it or editing it per se. So I'll be honest with you, this is probably like my 10th take and I'm pretty rusty with making YouTube videos, but I will try my best and I hope you guys enjoy it. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the topic for today, and that is OAuth. And I call it OAuth by analogy because I plan on explaining OAuth based on a real life analogy that I think really encompasses what OAuth is from a high level, or like the purpose of OAuth. But if you're like me, you probably have treated OAuth like a black box. Like, to be honest with you, I've worked with OAuth quite a bit. I've built integrations using the protocol, and obviously libraries abstract a whole bunch of the immediate intricacies of it, but I've never really thought about kind of reading the spec or kind of understanding like the history and whatnot. And now that I work at a security company, I have to think about OAuth. So I'm trying to unwrap this idea on my head of kind of OAuth and trying to explain it to the world. So if you're just like me, you probably have this image imprinted in your head about what OAuth is. It's like a Jackie Chan, right? You're like, what? But no worries. I like to present people who are learning OAuth for the first time with kind of a very important fundamental question that was very difficult to answer way back when. And it's like, how do you let a external application access information from another application that you utilize without giving that application your credentials, or logging in for them to go see like the data on there, right? So think of it like having Facebook. You might be liking a whole bunch of groups, and someone has built a application that can predict the extra set of groups that you might really enjoy, you might like. And to do that without giving away your credentials, that is solved by OAuth, or that is why OAuth was created, to solve this problem. So let's explain by a real life analogy. And I think, to me, this is probably the best analogy that I could possibly come up with. There are a whole bunch of other analogies, but just bear with me. I think it'll start to make a lot of sense when I explain this. So imagine a superhost Airbnb, or imagine you're the superhost Airbnb and you have this amazing property out on the coast, and it's so gorgeous. You can see the mountains, you can breathe the fresh air and the scent of the water, and it's so gorgeous. And the problem is, you work in the city and it's so far away that you can't possibly be there opening the door for you can't possibly be there all the time because you have work, and it's hard for you to rent it out because you can't physically be there. And the reality is, there's in the bottom of your heart, or in the back of your mind, that there are a ton of hipsters out there that would love this property too. And this is the potential side hustle, right? And that there's all these guests that could leverage your property and enjoy it on times you're not there. And that is a predicament that is even more difficult given the fact that you're super far away and you can't manage it physically being there. So this is solved by delegating the rental process, or the the management of this process, not like management, but the access to this property. Sorry, I got distracted because there's a lot of things going on outside. By Airbnb, right? You've probably seen an Airbnb, you probably used Airbnb, and now Airbnb allows you to list your property on the platform, define a set of rules, right? List your property on this platform, define a set of rules that say, hey, you're not allowed to access X, Y, and Z. This is my rate. This is an integration that you set up with Airbnb to generate access to your property. There's ways you can automate this entire process of renting out your property without you physically having to be there. You're delegating access to Airbnb. That's what we call it, or trusting Airbnb as a delegated or an entity, right? Or trusted entity, delegated access. So now that you have these hipsters that want to rent out your property, they agree to the transactional terms on Airbnb, and in return, Airbnb, when the time comes, they present an email to the guest with a PIN that allows them access to your property, as well as information on where your property is located. And this allows them to go ahead and walk over, drive through the boonies, and get to your property and access it within their given time frame. In addition, there are additional metadata that says, hey, this is the owner. If you need to contact them, reach them out here, X, Y, and Z. Okay, now that you understand this aspect, we can go ahead and replace, rip and replace all those things with the same terminology in the OAuth protocol, right? So let's replace property with a resource or a protected resource. We can replace Airbnb with an authorization server, right? And we can replace the guest, your hipster guest, with a client. Now, if you think about that, it's the same exact notion, right? You have this authorization server that you're allowing, that is acting as a trusted entity as yourself. This authorization server can allow this client to transact with it, agree to the terms based on the set of parameters, or we can call it scopes per se, right? Scopes that only grant certain access to your resource, your protected resource. Now, this is important because if you think about it, this passcode in OAuth is what we call a JOT, or a JSON Web Token. And in that JSON Web Token is an access token that allows you to use that access token to go to an API and access the resource with that access token. But based on the constraints of what you've defined on your authorization server, that access token can only go so far. So you can be like, hey, you're not allowed to touch my Facebook friends, but you can touch my email. This access token will grant you access to maybe my birth date, but not my friends of friends. And that's important because those are scopes or rules defined in the authorization server. Similar to like how a passcode only works within a slotted or allocated time frame based on your booking rental, right? And what kind of rules that you define within the property itself. Now, that is kind of my grand explanation of OAuth. I think it makes a lot of sense. I sure hope it does. To be fair, there are a lot of other additional complexities, like in terms of implementation, but from a high level perspective, that's all you really need to understand. In summary, OAuth is a system of rules that lets a client access your protected resource without having to pretend to be you. Okay? That's like my layman term of it. Or you having to physically log in for them and scrape your data, right? That is what OAuth solves, and that's what the protocol does. So I hope that is helpful. If you found that helpful, please give me a like. That was a ton of takes to record that video. Give me a comment. Tell me how I can improve or whatnot. Just tell me what you're working on. It's 2021. I'm just curious what people are working on these days because I'm always fresh out of ideas nowadays. And stay tuned. Follow my channel if you have not followed my channel. And have a great day and continue building. Take care, guys. Bye.